Good morning. My name is Sean, and today is May 12th, and it's 5 o'clock in the morning. Well, this video I want to talk about a problem. We have a problem in education, a problem that is so complex and so devious, and it took me a long time to try to figure it out. See, I've been a public educator, a special educator, a special education teacher for 24 years. For the last 14 years, I've been a district resource teacher for special education, supporting schools, a handful of schools in both Leeward District and Windward District on the island of Oahu. For the last 6 years, and I'll say more specifically the last 4 years, because of my situation. I got divorced in 2016, I got remarried in 2019, and I moved out to Laie, and I work now in Windward District, specifically Koko Complex and Castle Complex. Now, what this move did for me, it was a godsend, because I was burning myself out in Leeward. You cannot imagine the things we were doing there. It was great. I loved the team I worked for. I loved the camaraderie that we had, the unity, and we just had each other's back. It was the best group, I believe. We had the best boss that I ever had, who's now at state. And now to come on this side and to just feel so relaxed. And it's not because of, schools are difficult, but it's because it's a smaller district. Schools are smaller, and there's a culture here that's it was a little, not sure what the right word is, but yeah, I'll just say it for later. But I think it was just so relaxed here. Everybody had their own things to do. The departments took care of their own. See, in Leeward, we took care of everything from autism to behavior. We had programs, to oversee. We had alternative centers of campus placements, and we ran the gamut. And alongside, I'm kind of proud of myself, but I erected classrooms within classrooms. So, yeah, I'll leave it at that. But in Windward, I was doing the normal things that I would do, and some people are like, wow, you're a really hard worker. I'm like, this is not really hard work. But what it did for me, it gave me a lot of time to reflect and to ask questions. And I was very observant, and growing up, being observant is something I grew up with from a very young age after being told by my grandparents, be quiet, watch, listen, and learn. I wasn't allowed to talk. So I got pretty good at observing and listening. So I was doing that for my first 2 to 3 years, and I kept asking questions, and I kept doing and looking for answers. And last January in 2022, I started a doctorate program, only because I knew something was wrong. I knew it was, and I started off with these kids who have behaviors are missing language, and it started off with language deficiency. And so I went on a path, and I had a conversation with our then neuropsychologist, the only one in the DOE, Dr. Lian Mahapatra, who's no longer with us, but I still keep in contact because she actually started me on this path. She did a training at one school, and the training was about behavior. And what she told me was that behavior is a form of communication. And I was like, okay, behavior is a form of communication. But from that conversation, she started me on this quest to look at communication and language, and how some kids who misbehave is, they have a means to communicate. They behavior is because they cannot communicate something. So it started off on that. It was about a year before, so maybe 2021, or maybe earlier than that. But from that, I was on a quest. I was on a quest looking at past cases, past students who we had language deficiencies for, and I did have one. I'm big on that using trainings. I don't say his name, by the way, but he was a previous case that autistic, high behaviors, nonverbal, and he was in the fifth grade, and he is bigger than me. But then we had a solid team around him, and what we did was that we created a language program. So based on that, you know, Helen Keller then came into the picture. So all these things kept coming in because Helen Keller is the same way. She is language based. She had a language deficiency, but she didn't know how to communicate, and she was blind and deaf. But Anne Sullivan, who is my hero, one of my heroes, um, she had an understanding how important language is to a growing mind, because language, she said, language is the gateway to the world. It opens up the world to kids. The more language they have, the more they can learn. And in every environment, language development involves learning about the environment around them. And the more language they have within a home, you can translate it to around the school, the society. But anyway, the problem with education is we lost that, because language is the foundation. And I've been seeing that, and I came upon an article that really, really confirmed what I was feeling. This article was really about the medical field. And what the issues with medical field is the same issues that education field um, suffers from. So if you not understand medicine and what the issue is, pharmaceutical companies and governments, they only focus on problems, medical problems, and then they come up with solutions, which is pharmaceutical drugs and therapy. Okay, that kind of response is a reactive response, meaning there are underlying issues that is not being addressed, and there's preventative things that are not being focused on. A lot of things are being focused on the problem and the solutions because that's where the money is. That's where the money can be made. So they're not really interested in solving or putting the preventative things in and focusing on that. Because if you do the preventative things and you do it well, there won't be problems. So if you look at it from that standpoint, there's no money to be made if there is no problems, right? So you look at who's funding, government policies and stuff like that. Pharmaceutical companies, people who fund these medical things. I am wholeheartedly believing in God and His Bible, and He created us so that we could heal us with natural remedies made from the earth. But the government don't focus on that. But anyway, if you translate it to education is the same thing, and I'm realizing that now, because there is one critical foundational learning knowledge that is not being expressed and focused on, and it's being omitted actually, because 100 years ago, based on my research, it was present, it was there, kids were receiving it. I am a result from one of that. But if you look today, and if I've been working with teachers for the past 14 years, and I've been giving trainings, and I look at and reflect on how effective those trainings were. It was all trainings on reaction to problems. The curriculum that comes out, the conversations, and what the doctors are trained for, they're trained for looking at the problem, collecting data, procedures, and then thinking that if we address the situation, the problem, and we put a plan to help them progress, then we can get them there. But what I've been noticing is that year after year, plans don't change, kids don't improve, and kids get left behind, and they get to a certain age where they leave school, they no longer can get education, and parents, I feel bad for them. I feel bad for them because now they become long-time caregivers for kids who doesn't know what their place is in society, don't have a way to communicate, or cannot communicate effectively, don't efficiently and effectively address their behavior concerns because they don't have the ability to verbalize. That is the problem. So there's a lack of focus and a lack of understanding. And it's not only earlier intervention, it's not only reading more to kids, it's the knowledge of how language is developed. See, learning doesn't happen first it doesn't start at literacy. Learning doesn't start at literacy. Learning starts at language and oral development of language. It's modeled in the Bible. I did research from last January, and I seldomly find emphasis on language development for preventative measures of education. If the parents can start their language development, because the critical age for language development is between 0 and 3. That's where the language is first introduced. And if parents knew how to model language, how to narrate what they do, and how to pair words with the environment and stuff in it, kids will have a head start in learning. Now, I came up with this analogy. Learning is like driving. Okay, so when I say learning is like driving, the process of learning is the same as the process for driving. Today, if you look at how we become drivers on the road, we first got to have a car. The car got to be functional. We have to know the ins and outs of the car because we have to take care of the car. We got to make sure that the thing gets gas in it. We have to make sure it has good air in the tire. We have to make sure that all the lights are blinking and the lights are working and there's a horn, right? So same thing about our human bodies. We have to make sure the kids' bodies are functioning well. Do they have hearing? Do they have sight? Do they have smell? Do they have able to speak? Do they have the extremities? Because if they can't speak, like Helen Keller, can they be taught a mode of communication? Now, the quality of a child's communication will depend on what type of vehicle they have. They can have a skateboard, they can have rollerblades. If they are so impaired where they don't have a car, they might be able to, they don't have to walk. But it's our purpose and our moral responsibility to get to a child to a point where they can have conversation. Okay, but we have to build language in order for them to build communication. Then they can get to conversation. Okay, so there's a sequence of learning development, and it's not being followed. Today in schools, we expect kids to get behind the wheel and drive without first learning that they got to understand the vehicle that they have, and then they have to learn what the rules of the road are, what the signs mean, and how to navigate a car and operate it so that you can navigate safely. Today, we bypass all of that. We put kids behind a speeding car and we expect them to drive. And we're failing. So we see kids who can succeed because they have the language was built in them at the home prior to coming to school, so they can catch on a little quicker. Kids who have that language deficiency within the home come to school and they get into accidents. You see behaviors. So I'm going to further explain this in my later things, but this is my first video and my first blog. So those who hear, let you hear, because if you have a child, if you work with children and they have behaviors, or if you want a child, there's an important thing of learning about language development and how that is the vehicle. That is the vehicle. You want to upgrade? Your kid's going to start by walking. Okay, and then just think about this. Early development in language is like your kid starting to walk. Then when you upgrade, you move to a bike, and then next thing a scooter, the next thing a motorcycle, and it's getting faster. So the more language the child gets, the more upgrade and better that the language and communication can be. And by the age 3, if you do enough language within them, and Helen Keller, that movie The Miracle Worker, go watch it. Anne Sullivan said that in order for Helen to start to understand language, she would need to be exposed to 1 million words. a million words. Now, there's another research that I found, a video. Shoots, I forgot her name, but she's on a TED Talk, and she talked about language development. And she says, by age 3, in a successful environment where it's nurturing and it can be conducive to language learning, a child can reach up to 3,000 words. Okay, a child that reaches 3,000 words is on a path to success. More than 3,000 words, you're going to excel, because a child going to learn well. If they can get 3,000 words, by the time they get to kindergarten, they can move right into literacy, right into learning, right into the higher functioning thinking education. Okay, if the kids are coming to school with only 500 or less, they're behind and may never catch up, because teachers these days are not trained in language development, and they're not trained to advocate with parents and train parents on how to develop language within the home. That is missing. That needs to improve. That will improve our education, and you heard it here first. So this is Sean. Hope you enjoyed this. Like my page or my YouTube or wherever you heard this, like it and share it, because it's information that is being suppressed. It may not, video might not last long, because the powers they be may want it not heard. So I'll keep trying, I'll keep speaking, and hopefully you hear this, and I'll send it to you one-on-one if I have your number, but I'll send a link to YouTube. God bless, have a blessed day, and talk to you soon. Bye.